to do a little presentation on ICAN's vision for how we can unleash the potential of women who are highly educated in Sri Lanka. And finally, we're going to open it up for a discussion with you guys and a question and answer session for the ICAN team and for Kavita. So we really would love to have this discussion focus around how we can turn this shared vision that we have into action. To start off, I just want to say how privileged and honored we are to have Kavita here today. She just finished a 14-year tenure at the Global Fund for Women, which is the largest grant-making organization in the world that supports international women's human rights. And during her tenure, the accomplishments are many, but one of them is that assets went from $6 million to $21 million in her 14 years at the Global Fund for Women. And in addition to that, grant-making increased by $8 million per year. And the number of countries in which the Global Fund for Women has been working almost tripled during her tenure. So these are incredible accomplishments. In addition, Kavita is also an advisor to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And she's also now a visiting fellow at Stanford, so we're very excited to have her there. And Kavita also has numerous awards. So many that I don't think I could even list them here for you today. But my personal favorite, I guess, is the Women Who Could Be President Award from the League of Women Voters. And I'm definitely supportive of that. I hope it comes true. And in addition to that, with publications in the Foreign Policy magazine and the Huffington Post and The Nation, as well as speaking at events like TED and events for PBS, Kavita is a prolific writer and speaker on international women's human rights as well as international development issues. Yeah, she's incredible. And this past summer I was working at the Global Fund for Women, and it's an organization that I've really admired for a very long time, but when I got to work there and really read grant reports and meet with grantees, that was when I really grasped how grateful the women's organizations were to have the Global Fund for Women's support and to have Kavita's support. And I really got to see firsthand the tangible impact that the Global Fund has had on women's lives around the world. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming one of the most inspiring leaders of our time, Kavita Ramdas.
Then you'd have to spend the rest of your whole time trying to live up to that. Really, I mean, I didn't even recognize myself. So it's really wonderful to be here. I've had the pleasure of knowing Munira and Shabir since we first met through Castanea, and it's really nice to see other Castanea friends here in this gathering. And I want to thank both Shabir and Munira and Sarah for opening their home to all of us. And I consider it to be a great honor and privilege to be able to share a little bit in terms of my own experience with all of you this afternoon, because I felt that so many of the experiences and lessons that, just as Sarah has learned from being at the Global Fund, I had the same sense, coming to the Global Fund from the MacArthur Foundation in Chicago, where I had worked for almost 10 years, and then having the opportunity to really see how women on the ground were transforming their own lives and the lives of their communities around them, and what kinds of investments they were making in the future of our communities. So I have very much the same sense of awe, actually, 14 years later, as Sarah has from one summer. And I think, it just felt like it would be an opportunity to be able to share with all of you a little bit of what I've seen in terms of the potential that women have to actually give us and offer us solutions to some of the very complex problems that we face in the world. And I often like to tell people, I think a lot of folks who sort of in the past have focused on what I think wrongly are referred to as women's issues, because I can't actually figure out what set of issues that affect the world 50% of the world's population should check out of and be like, oh no, we're women, so we don't care about the environment, we're women, we don't care about health, we're women, we don't care about peace and security. I just never quite understood that. But anyway, for what it's worth, women's issues, that term has often been used to refer to politely women's reproductive purpose. You know, so you'll find that, you know, big foundations with programs in population, or programs around family planning, or programs around women's health. There's a whole set of things as though somehow everything that had to do with women began from our waist downwards, which is quite miraculous to me. But on the other hand, I think what is less commonly understood is not women's role as reproducers, but as producers of significant economic enterprise that makes this world go round. And I think that's something which you see every day. I mean, if people travel around the world, it's surprising how many donors to the Global Fund will come back from a trip to Kenya, or a trip to Tanzania, or a trip to Bhutan, or a trip to Cambodia, you know, where they went to see Angkor Wat, but they came back and they were like, wow, and you know what was really interesting? Like everywhere we went, women seemed to be like doing everything. They were like working, they were carrying, you know, water on theirs, they were like in the fields, they were working the construction sites in big cities in India. And yeah, well, men, we didn't really see them doing it. So I would always say like, well, you know, it is really, it's a fascinating thing, because that role of women as kind of the productive engines in their societies is often overlooked, is often actually not even very visible, because in these places you may actually see women in these roles. In many places women's labor is actually hidden, because that labor happens in the private space known as the home. And I was just talking to Kala and talking about the fact that in our home, in my own home, I've had the very interesting experience of having those roles switched, because for 14 years what made my work possible at the Global Fund for Women is that I have been married to a wonderful partner who has taken on those invisible roles that women usually play inside the home. And there has been a real recognition for us on a very personal level, the degree to which the invisibility of women's work, not just the invisibility of it, meaning not in the public sphere, the invisibility of it because it is not compensated financially. That invisibility was made visible by a wonderful group that the Global Fund for Women made a grant to in 2006. I remember it was one of the most favorite grants that I remember. A group in Barcelona in Spain decided to sort of stage a public demonstration of the worth of women's work in the economy. And they did it because they felt that, you know, most discussions around women's role, again, was kind of very much focused on sort of their role as mothers, as caregivers, as nurturers. So their protest was very simple. It is in Spanish the saying, cuando las mujeres paran, todo se para. When women stop, everything stops. And their simple call was to say to all women, whether or not they work in the paid workforce, or whether they quote unquote did not have a real job, they were just to not do any of the things they normally would have done in their daily life. So they weren't to make the bed, they weren't to wake up the kids, they weren't to take them to school, they weren't to go grocery shopping, they weren't to pick anybody up from school, they just weren't supposed to do what they normally do. And the entire city, and those of them who could, were supposed to come to a big rally in Barcelona in the main square. So there's about 10,000 women gathered in Barcelona. And the entire economy of the city kind of ground to a halt, because nobody was shopping, nobody was cooking, nobody was taking the bus.